The Galactic Council had been watching Earth for exactly 847 standard cycles before they made their first mistake. They assumed that because humans possessed no faster-than-light travel, no energy shields, and no plasma weapons, they were primitives. They were wrong. Admiral Zexar of the Vortak Empire stood on the bridge of his flagship, Dominion's Edge, watching the blue-green marble that was Earth rotate slowly beneath him. His 4 eyes gleamed with satisfaction as his tactical officer reported the completion of their fleet's deployment. "Sir, all 200 vessels are in position. The human homeworld is completely surrounded. Their primitive satellites have detected us, and their communication networks are buzzing." Zexar's mandibles clicked in amusement. The Vortak were one of the Council's 3 apex species, masters of 1,000 worlds, and conquerors of 100 lesser races. Humans would be added to that list before the day was through. "Open a channel to their leaders," he commanded. "Let's get this over with." In the United Nations headquarters in New York, Secretary General Maria Santos stared at the impossible sight on every screen around her. 200 alien warships, each one larger than an aircraft carrier, had appeared in Earth's orbit overnight. The world had gone from alone in the universe to utterly outgunned in the span of 6 hours. The main screen flickered, and suddenly she was face to face with something out of humanity's worst nightmares. The creature had 4 glowing red eyes, a mouth full of razor-sharp teeth, and skin that looked like polished obsidian. "Greetings, primitive humans." Admiral Zexar's voice was a guttural growl that the translation software barely managed to render intelligible. "I am Admiral Zexar of the Vortak Empire, speaking on behalf of the Galactic Council. Your species has been observed and judged. You will surrender your world within 1 rotation of your planet, or we will take it by force." Santos felt her blood turn to ice, but she forced herself to remain calm. Around the room, world leaders on video feeds looked equally stunned. What do you want from us? Your world is rich in resources we require. Your species will be relocated to designated reservation zones. Resist and face extinction. The choice is yours, but know this: no species in the history of the galaxy has ever successfully opposed the Galactic Council. The transmission ended, leaving humanity's leaders staring at blank screens. "Well," said President Chun from Beijing, his face pale on the video link, "I suppose we should have seen this coming." 24 hours, muttered Prime Minister Okafor from Lagos. "They're giving us 24 hours to surrender our entire planet." Santos straightened her shoulders. "Then we have 24 hours to figure out how to tell them no." Across the Earth, the reaction was swift and varied. Panic gripped some major cities as people fled to bunkers or tried to escape to remote areas. Others gathered in the streets, holding vigils and praying to whatever gods they believed in. Scientists worked frantically to analyze the alien technology they could observe. But in military installations across the globe, a different kind of preparation was taking place. General Patricia Hayes stood in the Pentagon's deepest bunker, surrounded by screens showing data that would have been science fiction 24 hours ago. Energy readings from the alien ships, gravitational anomaly reports, and most importantly, their deployment patterns. "They're not taking us seriously," she said to the assembled Joint Chiefs. "Look at their formation. They're spread thin, showing off. They want us to see their numbers and despair." "Ma'am," said Admiral Thompson from the Navy, "what exactly are you suggesting? Those ships are the size of small cities. Our most powerful weapons might scratch their paint." Hayes smiled grimly. "Admiral, you're thinking like we're gonna fight fair. Humans don't fight fair. We fight to win." She turned to the screens showing the alien formation. "They made 3 critical errors. First, they underestimated us. Second, they gave us time to prepare. And third," she paused, her smile becoming predatory, "they came within range of Earth. Ma'am. Gentlemen, ladies, activate Operation Killjoy. It's time to show the galaxy what humans do to uninvited guests." Admiral Zexar was not concerned when his long-range sensors detected increased activity on the human homeworld. Primitives always scurried around like frightened insects before their inevitable surrender. He had seen it dozens of times across dozens of worlds. What did concern him was the transmission he received exactly 18 hours after his ultimatum. The human female who had spoken for their leaders appeared on his screen again, but this time her demeanor was entirely different. Gone was the shock and fear. Instead, she looked calm, almost serene. "Admiral Zexar," Secretary General Santos began, "I've consulted with the leaders of every nation on Earth. We have reached a unanimous decision regarding your ultimatum." Zexar leaned forward, anticipating the surrender. No doubt they would beg for mercy, plead for their lives, offer him tribute. "Our answer is no." The Admiral's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, certain he had misheard. "You refuse." "Not just refuse, Admiral. We reject your authority, your right to be here, and your claim to our world. But more than that." Santos leaned forward, and for a moment, Zexar saw something in her eyes that gave him pause. "We're going to teach you why that was a mistake." The transmission ended. Zexar stared at the blank screen for a long moment. Then his mandibles clicked rapidly in what his species used as laughter. Brave words from insects about to be stepped on. Tactical, begin orbital bombardment of their major population centers. Perhaps after we kill a few million of them, they'll reconsider. "Sir," his tactical officer's voice was uncertain, "our long-range sensors are detecting massive energy buildups across the planet's surface. Whatever they're doing, it's happening simultaneously at hundreds of locations. Irrelevant. Their primitive technology cannot." Every alarm on the bridge began screaming at once. The first indication that humanity wasn't quite as primitive as the galaxy believed came from a grain silo in Kansas. Farmer Jim Thompson had spent 47 years growing corn and soybeans, but for the last 6 months, his silo had been growing something else entirely. Under the auspices of a Department of Energy agricultural research project, his property had been converted into something that would have made the Manhattan Project engineers proud. Deep beneath the grain silo, humanity's first mass-produced antimatter production facility hummed with barely contained energy. It was one of 300 identical facilities scattered across the globe, each one disguised as something utterly mundane. Grain silos, abandoned factories, shopping malls, office buildings, anywhere that large equipment could be installed without drawing attention. The project had been humanity's greatest secret for 2 years, born from theoretical physics that the galaxy would have assumed was beyond them. But humans had one advantage that the Galactic Council had never encountered in their 1,000-year reign. They were sneaky. When the activation signal came, Jim Thompson was in his kitchen, drinking coffee and watching the alien ships through his window. The ground beneath his feet vibrated for exactly 3 seconds as 2 kilograms of antimatter were loaded into a delivery system that would have impressed the ancient gods. Then his silo opened, and his contribution to humanity's survival screamed toward orbit at a significant fraction of the speed of light. He was one of 300 farmers, factory workers, mall security guards, and night janitors who had just declared war on the galaxy. Admiral Zexar had approximately 47 seconds to contemplate the nature of his error. His ship's sensors detected the launches simultaneously, 300 projectiles, each one small enough that his targeting systems initially dismissed them as debris. Then the energy readings came in. "Sir!" His tactical officer's voice cracked with disbelief. "These aren't conventional weapons. The energy signatures are..." "Sir, they're antimatter warheads." "Impossible. These primitives don't have antimatter technology." "Sir, impact in 30 seconds. Zexar's mind raced. Antimatter weapons were the province of the galaxy's most advanced civilizations. Even the Vortak Empire had only mastered them within the last century. For humans to possess such technology was evasive maneuvers. "All ships, emergency." The first warhead struck the heavy cruiser Inevitable Victory amidships. The explosion was visible from Earth's surface as a brief, new star that outshone the sun for 3 seconds. When the light faded, the Inevitable Victory and the 2 destroyers flanking it had ceased to exist. The remaining warheads found their targets with terrifying precision. Ships that had conquered planets evaporated in flashes of perfect annihilation. Vessels that had bombarded civilizations into submission simply ended. When the light show was over, Admiral Zexar looked out at the debris field that had been his fleet and tried to process what had just happened. Of his 200 ships, 47 remained. "Sir," his communications officer whispered, "we're receiving a transmission from the human homeworld." Secretary General Santos appeared on screen again, and this time she was smiling. "Admiral, I believe you wanted to discuss terms?" The emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike any in its 1,000-year history. Representatives of the three apex species, the Vortak Empire, the Crystalline Hierarchy, and the Psionic Collective materialized in the Great Chamber via quantum entanglement communication, their forms flickering with urgency. High Counselor Thexran of the Crystalline Hierarchy spoke first, her crystal lattice body resonating with disbelief. "Admiral Zexar's report cannot be accurate. A primitive species cannot have destroyed 153 ships of the line with antimatter weapons. The evidence is undeniable," replied Mind Prime Vexiel of the Psionic Collective, his ethereal form pulsing with troubled thoughts. "My telepathic operatives felt the death screams of thousands of Vortak crew members. The humans possess technology that should be impossible for their development level." Admiral Zexar, his image flickering from the bridge of his damaged flagship, still seemed stunned by what had occurred. "Honored counselors, I observed the attacks myself. The humans launched exactly 300 antimatter warheads simultaneously from concealed positions across their planet. Our intelligence suggested they had barely achieved fusion power. This level of technological advancement is irrelevant." Thexran's voice chimed like breaking glass. "Whatever their capabilities, they have committed an act of war against the Council. No species in galactic history has dared to attack Council forces and survive." Mind Prime Vexiel's form darkened. "Perhaps, Counselor Thexran, it is time to teach these humans why that is the case." On Earth, the celebration was muted by the sobering reality of what they had just accomplished. In the Pentagon's command center, General Hayes watched the tactical display showing the remaining alien ships in what could only be described as a defensive formation. 47 left," she said quietly. "But if their friends decide to show up," President Chen's voice came over the secure channel from Beijing. "General, our intelligence services intercepted some kind of quantum communication burst shortly after the attack. Whatever that was, word is spreading." "Ma'am," Colonel Morrison from the Air Force stepped forward, "our deep space monitoring stations are detecting massive gravitational anomalies at the edge of the solar system. Multiple sources, all moving this way at incredible speeds." Hayes nodded grimly. "How long do we have?" "Based on their approach velocity, 6 hours, maybe 7. "Then we use the time we have. Colonel, initiate Phase 2. It's time to show our guests what else we've been working on." The quantum communication reached Earth before the reinforcements did. Secretary General Santos found herself once again facing alien representatives. But this time it was a three-way call that would have been impossible to imagine just days before. High Counselor Thexran spoke first, her crystalline form reflecting light in prismatic patterns. "Humans of Earth, you have committed an act of unprecedented aggression against the Galactic Council. In our 1,000 years of existence, no primitive species has dared to attack our forces." Mind Prime Vexiel's ethereal presence seemed to press against Santos' consciousness as he spoke. "Your antimatter weapons display a level of technological sophistication that our observations suggested was beyond your capabilities. How did you acquire this technology?" Santos looked calmly at the three alien faces on her screen. "We built it ourselves." The silence stretched for several seconds before Thexran responded. "Impossible. Our sociological models indicate that species at your level of development lack the industrial capacity and scientific understanding for such weapons." "Your sociological models," Santos replied evenly, "appear to be flawed." Admiral Zexar leaned into view, his mandibles clicking with agitation. "You have destroyed 153 ships and killed thousands of my crew. This act of terrorism cannot." "Terrorism?" Santos interrupted, her voice sharp. "Admiral, you came to our world uninvited, surrounded our planet with warships, and demanded our surrender. You threatened to exterminate our entire species if we refused to abandon our homeworld. In human terms, that's called invasion. What we did to your fleet is called self-defense. Mind Prime Vexyol's form pulsed. Regardless of terminology, you have now drawn the full attention of the Galactic Council. Our combined fleets represent the military might of over 10,000 worlds. Surrender now, and your species will be allowed to exist in reservation zones. Continue this resistance and face complete extinction. Santos was quiet for a moment, looking down at something off-screen. When she looked back up, her expression had changed to something that the aliens couldn't quite read. Counselors, I've just received a report from our deep space monitoring stations. You've dispatched approximately 2,000 additional ships toward our world. They'll arrive in about 5 hours. You see the futility of resistance, Thexren chimed. 2,000 ships represent more firepower than has ever been assembled in galactic history. Surely you cannot hope to. Actually, Santos interrupted again. I think there's something you should know about humans before your fleet arrives. She paused, looking directly into the camera. We don't just fight to win. We fight to make sure the other guy never wants to fight us again. The transmission ended, leaving the 3 alien leaders staring at blank screens. Curious, Mind Prime Vexyol murmured. Their leader displayed no fear. In fact, her emotional state suggested anticipation. Admiral Zexar's image flickered with interference from his damaged ship. Honored counselors, I respectfully suggest that we may be underestimating these humans. Their antimatter attack demonstrated capabilities that suggest. Admiral, Thexran's voice cut through his words like crystal chimes. You will observe and report. In 4 hours and 53 minutes, the combined might of the Galactic Council will arrive at this insignificant world. Whatever tricks these primitives believe they possess, they will learn the price of defying the natural order. But even as she spoke, High Counselor Thexran felt something she had not experienced in her 3-century lifespan. Uncertainty. The combined fleet of the Galactic Council dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the solar system like an avalanche of metal and death. 2,000 ships representing the military might of 3 galactic civilizations spread across space in a formation that had conquered worlds and broken the will of entire species. Fleet Admiral Corvin of the Vortak Empire, Supreme Tactician Rex Yl of the Crystalline Hierarchy, and Warmind Zexthal of the Psionic Collective coordinated the largest military force in galactic history from their respective flagships. Their combined fleet represented not just overwhelming firepower, but the accumulated military wisdom of 1,000 years of conquest. Sensor sweep confirms the primitive homeworld remains in the same location, reported Supreme Tactician Rex Yl, her crystalline form resonating with tactical data. 47 ships from Admiral Zexar's original force remain in orbit, apparently undamaged but maintaining defensive positions. Warmind Zexthal's ethereal presence flickered with concern. The humans have had approximately 6 hours to prepare since we announced our arrival. Long-range scans detect no additional ships, no orbital fortifications, no evidence of military expansion. Fleet Admiral Corvin's 4 eyes gleamed with predatory satisfaction. Perhaps they have accepted the futility of resistance. 2,000 ships against 1 primitive world. Even their antimatter weapons cannot threaten a force of this magnitude. But as the combined fleet began its approach toward Earth, something nagged at the edges of Warmind Zexthal's consciousness. In his species' long history of telepathic warfare, he had learned to trust his instincts about enemy psychology. And right now, every instinct was screaming that something was wrong. On Earth, General Hayes stood in the Pentagon's command center, watching displays that showed the approaching alien armada. Around her, technicians worked with the calm efficiency of people who had prepared for exactly this moment. Ma'am, Colonel Morrison reported, all Phase 2 systems are online. The enemy fleet will be within optimal range in 17 minutes. What about our deep space assets? Hayes asked. All 17 platforms report ready status. The Prometheus arrays are fully charged and locked onto target coordinates. Hayes nodded, then activated the communications system. This is Sierra Control to all stations. Implement Protocol Damocles. Authorization Haze 77 Alpha. Across the command center, status lights changed from amber to green as humanity's greatest secret came online. The Galactic Council's fleet was still 3 million kilometers from Earth when Warmind Zexar detected the first anomaly. Fleet commanders. His telepathic voice reached his counterparts instantly. I'm detecting massive energy buildups throughout the solar system. The signatures are consistent with... That cannot be correct. Supreme Tactician HFY's sensors were more precise than those of her organic counterparts. Warmind, confirm your readings. I am detecting 17 distinct energy sources positioned at various points throughout this solar system. The power levels are unprecedented. Fleet Admiral Corvin's tactical display suddenly lit up with warning signals. All ships, emergency stop. Something is. The first Prometheus array fired from its position hidden in the asteroid belt. To call it a weapon was like calling a star a flashlight. The antimatter-catalyzed fusion beam that lanced across space carried more energy than some civilizations used in a year. It struck the crystalline hierarchy's heavy dreadnought eternal resonance at 97% of light speed. The ship didn't explode. It simply ceased to exist, converted to energy so completely that not even debris remained. Evasive maneuvers. Fleet Admiral Corvin roared, but space-based weapons don't miss at this range. The second array fired from its hiding place behind Jupiter's third moon. The third fired from the shadow of Saturn's rings. The fourth, fifth, and sixth fired in sequence from positions scattered throughout the outer solar system. Each beam found its target with mathematical precision. Each beam erased a ship that had conquered worlds. Each beam reminded the galaxy that humans had been preparing for this moment since the day they first looked up at the stars and wondered what was out there. Supreme Tactician HFY watched in crystalline horror as 17% of the combined fleet died in the span of 30 seconds. The humans hadn't just built antimatter weapons. They had built a network of system defense platforms that turned their entire solar system into a fortress. Impossible! Warmind Zexar's form flickered with disbelief. The energy requirements for such weapons would require the industrial output of dozens of worlds. Unless, HFY calculated frantically, they have been concealing their true technological capabilities for decades. The tactical situation was becoming clear to all three commanders simultaneously. The humans hadn't been lucky with their first attack. They had been prepared. This wasn't a desperate last stand by a primitive species. This was a carefully orchestrated ambush by an enemy that had been planning for this exact scenario. Fleet Admiral Corvin made the decision that would define his legacy. All ships, emergency hyperspace jump, retreat to minimum safe distance. As the Galactic Council's remaining 1,700 ships fled to the outer edge of the solar system, a new transmission reached them from Earth. Secretary General Santos appeared on their screens again, but this time she wasn't alone. Behind her stood figures in military uniforms from every nation on Earth, and their expressions were identical, the look of people who had just played their trump card. "Counselors," Santos began, "I believe we need to have a different conversation now." The emergency meeting took place in open space, far beyond Earth's system defense network. 3 alien flagships hung in the void like monuments to shaken confidence, while their commanders struggled to process what they had witnessed. "You planned this," Fleet Admiral Corvin stated, his voice carrying a tone that might have been respect in a different context. "The primitive technology, the apparent inability to defend yourselves, it was all deception." Secretary General Santos appeared on their shared communication channel, flanked by General Hayes and President Chun. "Not deception, Admiral. Preparation." Supreme Tactician HFY's crystalline form resonated with analytical frequency. "Our intelligence indicated that your species had only achieved basic fusion power and rudimentary spaceflight. The weapons you've deployed require technological capabilities centuries beyond your supposed development level." "Your intelligence," General Hayes interjected, "was based on what we allowed you to observe. Humanity learned a long time ago that it's better to be underestimated than overestimated." Warmind Zexar leaned forward, his ethereal presence pressing against the communication channel. "You've been watching us, How long have you known of our existence? President Chun smiled grimly. We've known about the Galactic Council for 73 years. Ever since our first radio telescopes detected quantum communication patterns from your shipping lanes. The silence that followed was profound. Finally, Supreme Tactician Rexwale spoke, her voice carrying harmonics of disbelief. 73 years? You've been preparing for first contact for 73 years. Not first contact, Santos corrected. First invasion. Our analysis of your communication patterns, your trade routes, and your expansion methodology made it clear that the Galactic Council operates under a policy of conquest and subjugation. We've been preparing for this conversation since 1952. Fleet Admiral Corvin's mandibles clicked rapidly. The sociological models predicted that a species at your development level would be fragmented, competitive, unable to coordinate large-scale projects. We are competitive, Hayes acknowledged. We compete to see who can build the most effective weapons. We compete to see who can hide them better. We compete to see who can contribute more to the defense of our world. Competition makes us stronger, Admiral, not weaker. Warmind Zexar's form flickered with what might have been anxiety. The antimatter production facilities, the system defense platforms, the coordination required for simultaneous deployment, the industrial capacity alone suggests. Suggests what, Warmind? Santos asked quietly. Suggests that we have severely misjudged not just your capabilities, but your entire civilization. Santos nodded slowly. Yes, you have. Would you like to know what else you've misjudged? The tactical display that appeared on the alien commander screens was unlike anything in their databases. It showed not just Earth's solar system, but the space within 50 light-years in every direction. And throughout that space, marked by discrete icons, were installations that shouldn't have existed. These are our deep space monitoring stations, General Hayes explained, her voice carrying the satisfaction of someone revealing a masterpiece. We've been watching you for 7 decades, learning your patrol routes, mapping your supply lines, studying your tactical doctrines. Supreme Tactician Rexwale's sensors analyzed the display with growing alarm. These installations, some are positioned along our primary hyperspace routes. You've been observing our fleet movements. Observing, recording, analyzing, President Chun confirmed. Did you really think that a species capable of developing antimatter weapons wouldn't also be capable of basic reconnaissance? Fleet Admiral Corvin stared at the display, his tactical mind rapidly processing the implications. The concealment technology required to hide installations along our major shipping lanes would require exactly the kind of technological base necessary to build system defense platforms. Hayes finished. Funny how that works out. Warmind Zexar's telepathic abilities allowed him to sense the emotions behind the human words, and what he felt made his ethereal form dim with concern. These weren't desperate primitives making a last stand. These were apex predators who had been patiently stalking much larger prey. What do you want? He asked quietly. Santos looked directly into the camera. We want you to leave. We want you to return to your council and explain that Earth is not available for conquest. We want you to update your databases to reflect that humanity is not interested in joining your galactic civilization under terms of subjugation. And if the council refuses to accept these terms? Supreme Tactician Rexwale asked. The smile that crossed Santos' face was the kind that had preceded some of humanity's greatest victories and most terrible defeats. Then, counselors, you're going to learn what happens when you threaten a species that's been preparing for war longer than your oldest soldiers have been alive. General Hayes stepped forward. Shall I show them the rest, Madam Secretary? Santos nodded. I think they should see the full picture. The tactical display changed, and suddenly the alien commanders were looking at something that defied their understanding of galactic politics. The 50-light-year sphere around Earth was revealed to contain not just monitoring stations, but weapons platforms, automated defense networks, and what could only be described as a fortress system spanning multiple star systems. 73 years of preparation, Santos said quietly. 73 years of building, hiding, planning, and waiting. You wanted to know what humanity is capable of, counselors. You're looking at it. The full session of the Galactic Council was unlike any in its millennium of existence. Representatives from over 300 species materialized via quantum entanglement in the Great Chamber, their forms flickering with nervous energy as the three apex species delivered their report. High Counselor Zexar of the Crystalline Hierarchy stood at the center of the chamber, her prismatic form reflecting the ambient light in patterns that conveyed deep unease. Honored representatives, what we discovered at the world-designated Earth requires a fundamental reassessment of our galactic policies. The chamber buzzed with translated whispers as species after species processed the implications of the failed human subjugation. Mind Prime Vexyul of the Psionic Collective materialized beside her, his ethereal form pulsing with barely contained information. The species designated human has demonstrated technological capabilities that exceed our previous assessments by several centuries. More disturbing, they have done so while maintaining the appearance of a primitive civilization. Ancient Counselor Zexar of the Benthic Federation, one of the Council's oldest member species, rippled his aquatic form in what translated as skeptical inquiry. Surely the loss of military vessels, while regrettable, does not warrant revision of policies that have served the galaxy for 1,000 years? Fleet Admiral Corvin's image flickered into existence, his battle-scarred flagship serving as testament to his recent encounter. Honored Counselor, they destroyed 300 ships in their first engagement. When we returned with 2,000 vessels representing the combined might of the apex species, they destroyed 300 more in 30 seconds. The chamber fell silent. Impossible, whispered Representative KLX Nix of the Silicon Collective. No single world possesses such firepower. Furthermore, Supreme Tactician Rexyl's crystalline voice chimed with mathematical precision. Analysis of their weapon signatures indicates industrial capacity consistent with a Type II galactic civilization. This suggests either technological advancement far beyond their apparent development level or, she paused, assistance from unknown sources. Warmind Zexthal stepped forward, his telepathic presence touching the minds of every representative present. There is a third possibility that we must consider. The humans may represent the emergence of a completely new type of civilization, one that develops advanced military technology while deliberately concealing its capabilities. The implications hit the chamber like a shockwave. For 1,000 years, the Galactic Council had operated under the assumption that technological development followed predictable patterns. Species developed spaceflight, then energy weapons, then faster-than-light travel, then advanced material science, and so forth. The idea that a civilization might deliberately skip steps or conceal their true capabilities challenged the fundamental assumptions underlying galactic politics. High Counselor Zexar called for order as the chamber erupted in translated discussions. Representatives, there is more. The tactical display that materialized above the chamber showed something that made even the ancient species reconsider their understanding of galactic geography. A 50-light-year sphere of space centered on Earth, revealed to contain a defensive network that spanned multiple star systems. They have been watching us, Mind Prime Vexyul announced, his words carrying telepathic weight that pressed against every mind present. For 73 years, the humans have been observing our civilization, learning our patrol routes, studying our military doctrines, and preparing for exactly the engagement that occurred. Ancient Counselor Zexar's aquatic form shifted with what translated as deep concern. The strategic implications are profound. If a single world can prepare defenses of this magnitude, what does this suggest about other worlds we have deemed primitive? More importantly, added Representative Vashtor of the Metal Communes, what does this suggest about the humans' intentions toward the galaxy? The question was answered 3 days later when humanity's first diplomatic vessel dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Council's capital system. The ship was unlike anything in the galactic databases. Sleek where Council ships were angular, elegant where they were massive, and radiating energy signatures that suggested technological capabilities beyond easy classification. It approached the Council station with the confident bearing of a civilization that had nothing to prove and nothing to fear. Secretary General Santos materialized in the Council chamber via quantum entanglement, flanked by General Hayes and a woman who introduced herself as Dr. Elena Vasquez, Director of Human Xenological Studies. Honored counselors, Santos began, we've come to discuss the future of human-galactic relations. High Counselor Thexran's crystalline form resonated with cautious formality. Secretary General, your species' demonstration of military capability has certainly impressed the Council. What terms do you propose for your integration into galactic civilization? Santos smiled, and every alien representative present felt a subtle shift in the chamber's atmosphere. I think you misunderstand our position, High Counselor. We're not here to integrate into your civilization. We're here to announce the formation of our own. The silence that followed was absolute. Dr. Vasquez stepped forward, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had spent decades studying alien psychology. For 73 years, we've observed the Galactic Council's expansion methods. We've watched civilizations absorbed, worlds conquered, species relegated to reservation status. We've concluded that your model of galactic governance is incompatible with human values. What are you proposing? Warmind Zexar asked, his telepathic abilities detecting undercurrents of determination that made his ethereal form dim with apprehension. General Hayes activated a tactical display that showed the galaxy from humanity's perspective. We're proposing an alternative. Over the past 7 decades, we've made contact with 47 species that the Council classified as primitive or unsuitable for integration. Turns out, many of them were simply unwilling to accept subjugation as the price of joining galactic civilization. The display showed star systems throughout the galaxy, marked with discrete icons that indicated something the Council had never considered possible: an alternative power structure. The Terran Alliance, Santos announced, is a voluntary confederation of species committed to mutual defense and technological cooperation without conquest or subjugation. Membership is by choice, not force. Worlds keep their sovereignty, species maintain their independence, and conflicts are resolved through negotiation rather than warfare. Ancient Counselor Thexmar's aquatic form rippled with what might have been admiration. And if the Council objects to this alternative structure? Santos looked directly at him, her expression carrying the weight of humanity's 7-decade preparation for this moment. Then, Honored Counselor, you're welcome to try stopping us. But I should mention that our 47 allied species have spent the last several decades learning from humanity's example. They've been building their own defenses, developing their own technologies, and preparing for their own independence. The tactical display changed, revealing the true scope of what humanity had accomplished. Across the galaxy, in systems the Council had dismissed as irrelevant or primitive, defensive networks were coming online. Species that had been written off as backwards were revealing technological capabilities that rivaled or exceeded Council standards. The galaxy, Dr. Vasquez said quietly, is about to become a much more interesting place. The session ended with something unprecedented in the Galactic Council's 1,000-year history: uncertainty about the future. As the human delegation departed, leaving behind promises of peaceful coexistence and subtle reminders of the consequences of aggression, the Council faced a new reality. For the first time in a millennium, they were not the only game in town. High Counselor Thexran watched the human ship disappear into hyperspace, her crystalline form reflecting patterns of light that conveyed deep thought. Warmind Vexial, what are your species' projections for long-term coexistence with this Terran alliance? The psionic collective's representative flickered with contemplative energy. The humans have demonstrated something we believed impossible: the ability to unite competitive instincts toward a common defensive goal while maintaining individual sovereignty. Their alliance model suggests a form of civilization we have never encountered. Mind Prime Vexial paused, his ethereal form dimming as he processed complex calculations. More concerning is their demonstrated patience. 73 years of preparation suggests a species capable of multi-generational strategic thinking. If they view the Council as a long-term threat, then we may be facing a conflict that spans centuries rather than campaigns. Fleet Admiral Corvin concluded from his flagship. Honored counselors, I respectfully suggest that our previous assumptions about galactic dominance may require revision. Ancient Counselor Thex_Mars aquatic form shifted in patterns that conveyed ancient wisdom. In my species' long history, we have learned that the galaxy occasionally produces civilizations that change everything. The humans appear to be such a civilization. Supreme Tactician Rex YL's crystalline analysis cut through the philosophical discussion. The immediate tactical situation is clear. We face an opponent of unknown capabilities, unknown allies, and unknown intentions. Continued aggression risks escalation with unpredictable consequences. High Counselor Thexran resonated with harmonic patterns that conveyed decision. Then let it be recorded in the Council archives. The species designated human and their associated alliance represent a new galactic power. We will observe, we will prepare, and we will hope that their stated preference for peaceful coexistence proves genuine. As the Council session ended, representatives returning to their home worlds carried news that would reshape galactic politics for centuries to come. The age of unquestioned Council dominance was over. The age of the Terran alliance had begun. 5 years later, Ambassador Chun Lu stood on the observation deck of Harmony Station, humanity's first deep space diplomatic facility, watching ships from dozens of species dock at the growing installation. The station orbited a neutron star in neutral space, equidistant from both Council and Alliance territories, serving as a symbol of the new galactic order. Through the transparent aluminum windows, she could see vessels that represented the stunning diversity of the Terran Alliance. The crystalline bioships of the reef builders, the quantum phase vessels of the probability engineers, and the living metal constructs of the iron symbionts. Each species had brought unique technologies and perspectives to the Alliance, creating a confederation more innovative and adaptable than anything the galaxy had seen. Ambassador, her aide approached with a data pad. The quarterly reports from our member worlds. Chun reviewed the statistics with satisfaction. 47 species, 233 worlds, and 0 military conflicts between member civilizations. The Alliance's model of voluntary cooperation and mutual defense had proven more effective than anyone had dared hope. Any word from the Council territories? She asked. Intelligence suggests they're adapting their expansion policies. 3 species in the past year have been offered protectorate status rather than outright absorption. It appears our example is influencing their approach to first contact. Chin smiled. That had been the hope from the beginning, or not to destroy the Council, but to provide an alternative that would force them to evolve. A communication alert chimed, and she activated the quantum entanglement link. Secretary General Santos appeared on the display, her image transmitted instantaneously across hundreds of light years. Ambassador, how are our new friends settling in? Better than expected, Madam Secretary. The crystalline refugees from the Outer Rim have established 3 colonies in Alliance space, and they're already contributing to our defensive network research. Their harmonic resonance technology is proving remarkably compatible with our antimatter systems. Any signs of Council interference? None. They appear to be respecting the territorial boundaries we established. Admiral Zexar has actually requested formal diplomatic channels for trade negotiations. Santos nodded approvingly. Excellent. And our deep space monitoring network. All stations report normal operations. We're tracking Council fleet movements as usual, but their patrol patterns suggest defensive positioning rather than aggressive expansion. The conversation was interrupted by an alert from the station's communications center. Chun frowned at her aide's concerned expression. Ma'am, we're receiving a priority transmission from the edge of Alliance space. Well, it's a species we've never encountered before. They're requesting emergency assistance and claiming to be fleeing from something they call the Devourers. Chun and Santos exchanged glances across the quantum link. In the 5 years since humanity's emergence onto the galactic stage, they had learned that the galaxy was far larger and more complex than even their 73 years of observation had suggested. Put them through, Santos ordered. The alien that appeared on screen was unlike anything in either Alliance or Council databases. Roughly humanoid but covered in what appeared to be living metal, with eyes that held depths of intelligence and desperation. Greetings. The being spoke through translation protocols. I am Conductor ZYX Tal of the Symphonic Reach. Our civilization spans 2,000 worlds across the galactic rim, and we face extinction from entities we cannot comprehend or combat. We have observed your alliance's resistance to the Council forces and your defensive capabilities. We come to ask for aid, and to warn you of a threat that makes your previous conflicts seem insignificant. The being's image flickered with what might have been fear. The Devourers consume entire star systems, converting matter and energy into something else entirely. They have already destroyed 47 of our worlds, and our projections suggest they will reach the inner galaxy within 50 years. Chun felt a chill run down her spine. What exactly are you asking of us? Alliance with the symphonic reach and preparation for a war unlike any in galactic history. The Devourers represent an existential threat to all organic and digital life. They cannot be negotiated with, cannot be reasoned with, and cannot be stopped by conventional means. Santos leaned forward on the display. Conductor ZYXTEL, are you suggesting that the Council and Alliance may need to cooperate? Yes, Secretary General. For the first time in galactic history, all civilizations face the same enemy. The Devourers make no distinction between Council worlds and Alliance worlds. To them, we are all simply resources to be processed. As if summoned by the conversation, another communication alert chimed. High Counselor Thexran of the Crystalline Hierarchy materialized alongside Santos' image, her prismatic form reflecting urgent patterns. Ambassador Chun, Secretary General Santos, the Council has received similar warnings from refugees at the Galactic Rim. We must discuss immediate cooperation protocols. The time for political divisions has ended. Chun looked out at the diverse ships surrounding Harmony Station, representing dozens of species that had found peace and prosperity through cooperation rather than conquest. Now, it seemed that cooperation would face its ultimate test. Very well, she said quietly. Let's see if the galaxy can learn to work together when it truly matters. The first Joint Council Alliance emergency session was scheduled for the following day, as representatives of 3 galactic civilizations began planning for a war that would determine the survival of organic life itself. Humanity had spent 73 years preparing for the galaxy as they found it. Now, they would have to help prepare the galaxy for something none of them had ever imagined. The Devourers were coming, and the real test of human ingenuity was about to begin.